Welcome to another episode of Rockets Talk, bro. The Houston Rockets, your Houston Rockets just drafted Reed Sheppard, the guy I always wanted. Let me tell you, right? Let me hit you with the Trump. Let me tell you, how about this guy Reed? I always wanted him. You guys know I'm just playing, but
The best.
Reed Sheppard is the Houston Rocket. We just finished doing a 3.5 hour Rockets watch live stream of the draft. I would say that, obviously you guys can watch our conversations leading up to the draft about the players. Definitely not mad at it. I think Reed was the best fit for the Rockets. I personally was on team trade back. But to me, this is the second best option that they would have had up there for a player that they would have gotten. Now, this day started off a little weird, right? There was a lot of weird discussions going on that look kind of crazy now in retrospect. And I want to hear your whole view from the start of the day. The first thing that came out this morning was the Rockets were drafting Klingon. And I heard that. I was like, what the hell is going on? It's 2024. Why are we even considering drafting a drop big with the third overall pick? And then it turned into, even backing up from there, the trade with Brooklyn, and we can get into that. The Sengun trade allegations, the Klingon for replacing Sengun, all of that, and we end up with Reed Sheppard, man. So it's been a crazy 24 hours. What has been your perspective on everything leading up to that?
Okay, I forgot about that. We're talking about the Brooklyn trade too. So
the freaking trade, yeah.
Right. Okay, so are we starting with draft, trade? Like, where should I start?
Let's build it up. Let's start off with the trade, then we'll build up, and sequentially to the draft. So the trade.
So this was for me. I saw the Woj bomb, last night, a couple nights ago, whatever it was, that the Knicks were trading for Bridges. And my first thought, and I even tweeted this, was, oh, that Brooklyn pick is looking pretty. The Nets pulled the trigger. They got a big haul from the Knicks. Shout out to Sean Marks. I think he did a great job, to be honest with you. So good for the Nets. And I'm thinking, okay, cool. Rockets are in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes. Tweeted it. Boom. Maybe 10 minutes later, maybe not even, we get the news that the Rockets traded their some of the Nets picks back in exchange for some of the Suns picks. And at first I was like, and the reasoning was that Woj was saying, the Rockets want to go big game hunting, use these picks, get a star. And I'm thinking, I guess, like the Nets picks were looking good, whatever. All in all, after sitting on it, so the Rockets confirmed that the Nets made the trade with New York because they had a deal in principle with the Rockets to get their picks back. So they made a calculated decision to tank. So those two moves were connected. It was basically like an unofficial 3-team deal, kind of. So that makes sense. And then you basically swap the 25 Brooklyn swap rights and the 26 Brooklyn pick for 25 swap rights with Phoenix, which will be probably not as good, obviously, as with Brooklyn, but whatever. And then you get a first-round pick from Phoenix in 2027, and then you also get the best of Phoenix or Dallas's first-round pick in 2029 and the right to swap Houston's pick with whichever of those picks is left over between the Phoenix or Dallas pick in 2029. So Houston let's just put it like this. If Phoenix gets the first overall pick, Dallas gets the 5th overall pick, and Houston gets the 10th overall pick in the 2029 draft. Houston gets Phoenix's first overall pick, and then they can swap their 10th overall pick for Dallas's 5th overall pick, and they would essentially move up from the 10th overall pick to having both number 1 and 5. Not bad. And they retain the right to swap with Brooklyn in 2027, which is important because if Brooklyn is going to go full-blown tank and rebuild, which they may not, they may accelerate their rebuild. They may use all this draft capital that they got to make a trade, whatever. But if they don't, if they go, classic rebuild, as Rockets fans, we already know 2 drafts is not enough to fully rebuild, right? And so the 2024 draft just happened. Brooklyn didn't get anybody because we had their pick, haha. But they would have the 2025 pick, 2026 pick, and then that would get you to the 2027 draft. If you remember, after 2 rebuilding tank picks, the Rockets were still one of the worst teams in the NBA, right? So that 2027 swap right with Brooklyn could come in handy. So all in all, I like it. Ultimately, I feel like the Rockets really had full leverage over Brooklyn, and they could have maybe squeezed a little bit more out of it. We'll never know. I wasn't in the room. Overall, I like it, though. the Rockets are basically extending their timeline to use those picks so that they can, keep their optionality open further down the line, see what the young core is able to do this season, and then make some moves from that point, depending on who they decide to extend and what they do with the picks to trade to go get a star or whatever. So that's how I feel about it. What about you?
All right, I'm gonna just for the audience, I'm gonna read out a tweet I put out, kind of detailing where we are right now with our pick situation. So 2024, we have the Brooklyn first round pick swap, which became Reed Sheppard. 2025, the Rockets own their own pick with a Phoenix first round pick swap. That basically they get the leftovers of OKC. So OKC gets the first rights to that pick, then whatever's left over from that, we can swap with them. So that's something new. Basically traded Nets swap for a Phoenix swap. 2026, no pick. We have no pick in that draft. From there, 27, we own our own pick. We have a Phoenix unprotected first round pick. And you said a Brooklyn pick swap, right? Because I think I missed that in 27 in the original tweet that I put out. Okay, so we have pretty much 3 first round picks, 2 picks and a swap. 28, no change. We have our own pick. And 2029 is another addition, is our own pick plus what you were explaining, the Phoenix unprotected and the Dallas swap rights from that. Which so essentially we traded out the Brooklyn picks that were short term, closer to us right now in the coming seasons, for the same picks, I think, plus a swap. It's like a swap, right? Pretty much, or is it net a pick and a swap?
The Rockets add an extra pick in 2029 and a swap in 2029. Right, the swap might not.
So it's like So 29
swap might not convey.
So. Yeah. So you pretty much a pick and a half. I'll just say that. To me, now if you're going to look at drafting, if you were focused on drafting quality of a player, some would say, and I agree, that the Brooklyn's path would have been the best path, because what we found out is that Rafael, basically the Rockets said the Knicks trade with Brooklyn couldn't have went through without the Rockets doing their part, which makes sense. You wouldn't trade Mikal away and for that if you knew that you weren't going to be able to control your destiny as a team to tank. So that happened. The quality of the draft, obviously Cooper Flagg being the top pick coming up in the 25 draft, it's probably a better quality because you kind of project there is some good players coming out over the next few years that are projected. Anything can change. To me, what this tells me is that the Rockets are done with drafting young players right now. And the way I perceive it is that they've put themselves in position to trade quality for quantity, because it sounds better if I tell you, hey, bro, I'll take X and X player. I'll give you 6 first-round picks, 5 first-round picks, 3 unprotected and 2 swap, whatever, than just 4 or whatever they were able to do before this. Now, this argument is still up in the air because it doesn't mean it's automatically successful, but I like it because it's appropriate for where they are as a franchise right now. We cannot keep drafting players, and this will touch on some of the Reed Sheppard stuff. They basically said, we want to win, and we are putting ourselves in position to go get the assets to do so, and we don't think drafting is the best path to winning right now. So the way I look at it, they give a 2-year window, about a year or 2, of assessing their current players, and then you're waiting out to see what shakes this next summer and the summers after that, because you have picks, your own picks, you have Phoenix's picks and some swaps, and they have young players. So to me, this is the first big win now move that the Rockets have made in this process. Signing Fred was a stabilizing move. Let's just get our feet back under us, dealing and all that. This trade was a win now trade. That's how I perceive it. That's how I'm looking at it.
It's win now, but it's not a move that's going to be made now. I don't think.
Right, exactly. It's
you know
like
what I mean?
Pivot to winning.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So, and I think that's a good way to put it, right? They basically said, hey, we need quantity, which they do, because people were all, I think people had it a little twisted, thinking like, hey, the Rockets have this treasure chest of picks. They really didn't. They basically had 1 pick per year for, I don't know, however many years. But they had a surplus of picks, and they kind of used some of them in the first couple years of the rebuild. They used a couple to go get Sengun. They did some wheeling and dealing. But they were basically averaging 1 pick per year, and that's not enough. If they want to go trade for a star, that's not enough. They're going to have to include 1, maybe 2 players out of the young core that they probably didn't want to have to include. So by going out and getting some more draft capital, you put yourself in a position where you can trade those picks. And The fact that they're so far out in the future, I think, is probably more attractive on the market because the uncertainty of the picks means like, hey, man, they could still be valuable, you know?
Yep.
Whereas when the picks are closer, you know, this year's pick, next year's pick, you really got to make sure that the team you're trading those picks to intends to use those picks soon, because if they don't have any use for them, and then the value of them is lower and you can't make the deal, right? So I like it. Like I said, I wish they would have gotten a little more. I felt like they could have stared Brooklyn down and dared Brooklyn to try to win some games and see how that was going to go for them, and make them crawl back to the table and be like, yo, now give us what you got. But at the end of the day, I like it. I mean, we have to keep it real. Brooklyn, had the Rockets not gotten lucky with the odds falling the way they did, Houston would have the 9th pick this draft, not the 3rd pick, right? The East is going to be weak again, most likely. So Brooklyn could either make a play-in or be like the 11 or 12 seed, right? Is all that worth trying to get Cooper Flag, especially when, you know, you have a team that you've built and you got to weigh that against a 14% chance at Cooper Flag? Probably not, right? So I'm cool with it. Now the question becomes, and this is my other criticism. These are minor criticisms, but my other criticism is, at some point, I would like this whole idea and dream of optionality. We've been talking about optionality for years. And Stone has kind of kicked the can down the line with this optionality, right? We get the Brooklyn picks. Now we're shifting those down 3 years, and we got the Suns picks. At some point, I want this optionality to materialize into the team, you know, like, all right, cool. We got these assets. We got the flexibility. Well, what do we do with them? And that's the question, right? So that's what remains. They have flipped the picks into more picks. They've used some picks to draft players. They've assembled young talent. Now, what are the final pieces going to look like? That's my question.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point, and I think that one thing that came out of that story was the idea of the Rockets actually making a trade this summer, you know, with the Phoenix Suns. I think with this team, that's one of the positive I like from this trade, because the team that they picked to engage the extension of picks with is one that is incredibly unstable right now. Now, as you pointed out, I don't think there is in a bad a situation as people try to paint it out to see. At the end of the day, they still have three-star level players. So they're not Brooklyn as Brooklyn is right now, dying to get off of Mikal Bridges so they can tank. So I can see why some people are mad and say you would have just let Brooklyn just sink and just reap the benefits from that. But, you know, there's 2 players. One of them was rumored, which was Kevin Durant, to be a target for the Rockets. That was dispelled as not being true. And then the one that did come out as a target for the Rockets, or a player they'd be interested in future, is Devin Booker. So kind of a subplot of this that led to the idea of trading one of our players, whether Jalen or Sengun, is the fact that, you know, what you're talking about. At some point, you know, the old saying says you gotta take a dump or get off the pot. And I think that starts like this season for the Rockets. There's really no more prospect or potential. It is now. Like you've been a 500 team. We just seen, you know, Ime Udoka. I never missed the playoffs watching his former team win the championship. I don't think that it'll be something that is attainable for them to come back and not make the playoffs again. So I feel like they're coming from a position of results-oriented, like basketball. And if that's going to be the case, then I can see them being aggressive. One of the things, like the kind of the arguments that came out, is if the Rockets were to make a trade for a player on the Suns, would it be an equal or a good trade if we traded Alperen Sengun for the likes of Devin Booker or Kevin Durant? And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. I'm going to share mine. Number one, I think anybody, anywhere, at any time is always tradable in the NBA. I don't think there's a player that people should go gee golly over. Number two, I think that the fact that Alperen Sengun is being mentioned in trade talks with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker is a hell of a compliment, and shows to me how valuable of a player he is in the NBA, right? Because you don't become a centerpiece of a trade package if you're trash or you're bad or teams don't like you or whatever people think about Alperen. We know that the Rockets turned down offers for him and BI straight up, so that gives you a base line to me, this shows the high end of what his value could be, which is good young player that every trade package seeks, that young prospect that you could possibly build a team around or be a key part of a team build that you include in a trade. As a Rockets fan, I'm okay with that because I want what's best for the Rockets. As a fan of Alperen Sengun and his play, I think that does also give you show you his value for the team. And back to your point about this year, I think him and Jalen this year, this is a big prove it year. He can solidify his like what he is in this NBA. If he comes out and has a season like he did last year, improves efficiency, maybe gets a couple more boards. If the team just wins more and he plays the same, I think he elevates himself to a different talk. So guys, the trades are going to come. Like the trade offers, blah, 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 blah. It's just part of the game. But I think it kind of speaks to where the Rockets are now as opposed to when, all these guys were rookies and sophomores and stuff like that when we were tanking.
Yeah, I mean, so look, let's touch on a few things. First, you talked about the team that they're targeting, which is now Phoenix, right? It's funny that Rafael Stone and the Rockets keep targeting whatever team Kevin Durant is on. they went after Brooklyn.
Mismatch hunting.
Right? They won that gamble. Now they're going after Phoenix. Simultaneously, there's rumors that they want Kevin Durant. Does that mean they're going to trade for him and then the Rockets will crumble? Who knows? I do want to remind Rockets fans that, hey, the gamble on Brooklyn melting down worked. However, man, we got kind of lucky. We could never have predicted that Kyrie Irving was going to tweet that video that he tweeted that got him in the trouble that it got him in. We could have never predicted that James Harden, after being an Iron Man, was going to get hurt in the playoffs when they should have beat Milwaukee in the season prior to that. It was hard to predict that COVID would happen and that Kyrie Irving not getting the vaccination shot turned into the thing that it turned into, which from what I remember seemed to be the tipping point for Harden because he was like, all right, man, what are we doing? Get me out of here. And then he demanded the trade. We could not have predicted those things. The likelihood of those things happening again, very slim. So in targeting Phoenix, yes, there are some ways that their payroll is structured that is going to make it really hard for them to maintain success and to be successful. And they had a shitty season last season. They totally underperformed expectations. If they come out this season and underperform again, yeah, things might hit the fan in Phoenix. However, they still have a lot of talent. They still have Kevin Durant. They still have Bradley Beal. They still have Devin Booker. And they replaced Frank Vogel, who I thought was a really bad hire, with Mike Budenholzer, he's still not, he still has his limitations as a coach, but he has won a championship, and I do think he can probably get those guys on track. So let's keep all of that in perspective, right? The likelihood of things melting the way that they did in Brooklyn, probably not going to happen. The flip side of that, we have till 2027 for that to really matter because next season is a swap right with Phoenix, and then 2027 is when the Phoenix first-round pick kicks in. So we have a cushion, which was by design. As far as Alperen Sengun being involved in those trade talks, totally agree with you. It's a compliment. You don't hear Jalen Green's name in there. You don't hear Jabari Smith's name in there. Maybe Amen Thompson. I don't think he would be the singular centerpiece. I think he would be him and another player. You don't hear Cam Whitmore. I don't say any of that to diminish or put down the other players, but I say it to elevate Sengun. I mean, he's reached a status where he could potentially, theoretically, be the centerpiece of a trade for a player like Kevin Durant or Devin Booker. The downside to that kind of stuff for me is the players specifically in target. Kevin Durant, this season is going to be 36, and he has not played more than 55 games. He has only played more than 55 games once in the last 5 years, I think, and he's getting older, right? So, that's not good. And then Devin Booker is the other player, right? For me personally, I think the hardest type of player to find in the NBA is one who can score and create for others at a high level, right? Score, be an engine, 2 birds, 1 stone, run your offense, be your best scorer, whatever. We talked about this on the last episode. There's different tiers of those kinds of players, right? Sengun's not in the Luka tier. But Sengun is in the lower tier of that type of player he's only 21, right? With potential to continue to get better and add to his game. Hardest type of player to find. When you find that type of player, if you let that player go, you better know who's going to replace them as the engine of your team. Because if you don't, case in point, Phoenix, things get a little ugly if all you have is just a bunch of buckets, right? A bunch of dudes that score. There's more to basketball than scoring points. You have to build a team. So if you're going to trade Sengun for Kevin Durant or Devin Booker, Both of those guys are finishers. We talked about this on the last episode. Playmakers, creators, play finishers. Both of those guys are finishers. They can do some creating, sure, but they're not running your offense, right? So that would give me concern. You get Devin Booker, let's say. Okay. What else? Like, is that the final piece? Because that doesn't seem like a complete team to me. You still got to do more. The other thing that would be disappointing about a trade if Sengun is the guy that gets traded in a move like that is Jalen Green. Sorry, pause for a minute. Jalen Green. You drafted Jalen Green to become Devin Booker. So if you then got to trade Alperen Sengun to go get Devin Booker when you have Jalen Green, who you thought was going to be Devin Booker, it's a tough pill to swallow for me because it's just like, damn, you used the number 2 pick on a player that you thought was going to be this player, and now you got to trade your best young prospect, right, and other picks just to go get that player. So it's just kind of like an inefficient use of the assets. That would be disappointing to me. Now, if you can pull that trade off without sending Alperen Sengun over and without sending one of like an Amen Thompson or something over, Sengun and Book, that is interesting to me. That would be fun, especially if you surround them with, the other guys on the team, whoever would be left over that doesn't get traded. We have a stable of defensive wings, guys that are interchangeable, switchable, 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", strong, long. Some of them can shoot, some of them can dribble, get out in transition, versatile lineups, all of that, right? Complement Sengun very well. And then you'd have Devin Booker give you 25 a night on top of that efficiently. That becomes interesting. All that being said, I think the Rockets are in a good position because they have the luxury of seeing what this current iteration of their team can become. And then they can go kind of pick and choose and be like, all right, we need, this type of player, and we're going to target this type of player. So I like it. I think they're in a good place for the most part.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, obviously, we've seen a lot of Rafael Stone over the years. I think he's matured, and I'm sure that the council around him has improved. Honestly, I see the difference in how they're moving since Ime got on board. I'm not going to say Ime Udoka is in the front office, but I like the way they're moving a little bit, and I think his influence has been good, and I'm sure that collectively they're all getting better at their jobs as they're getting more experience. Now, on to the actual draft itself.
Real quick. Can I just one comment on that point, because I think it's an important and interesting point. I've had criticisms for the front office. I do think we sometimes forget that front offices, just like players on the court, need the right pairings as well, right? Rafael Stone with Steven Silas, I don't know. I was not really confident in what they were doing. Rafael Stone with Ime Udoka, starting to make a little more sense. The pieces of the puzzle are coming together, right? The picture's starting to get painted, and it seems like Udoka might be the stabilizing force, the direction that Stone needs or has needed, right? So I think the pairing is working out pretty well. Since Udoka's come on board, things have made more sense. The moves they've made have started to produce better results. So just an interesting point how, maybe you get a good GM, but sometimes maybe that GM, or maybe you get an unknown at GM, but maybe that GM needs some counterparts to kind of keep him accountable and keep him in place and vice versa. So,
yeah, it's a team sport, and some people are just better doing their job, their part of the job. I honestly think Stone was doing too much under Steven Silas, trying to compensate for where he perceived Silas's weaknesses were, and overstretched his authority probably into the basketball side of things. Whereas now he can just do his thing as a general manager and focus on making deals and contracts and things like that. But up to the draft now, the draft day comes on all day long, Roosh. It was Donovan Kling. We saw Windhorse come on ESPN first thing in the morning to drop the bomb that the Rockets are looking at Donovan Kling at the 3rd pick. And then if they draft him, then obviously they'd be looking to replace him with Alperen Sengun. I don't know why people like picking on Alperen Sengun. And then that was the narrative all day, pretty much all day long leading into the day. And then we get to the actual draft. The first weird domino that goes down is that Risa Sher, I hope I said that right, probably not.
Risa Shea.
Risa Shea, yeah. Let me say it like Adam.
I'm gonna try to say it in a French accent.
Adam Silver was doing a lot.
Risa Shea.
But yeah, Ricochet, he went number one to Atlanta, which was crazy to me. I love Ricochet. Y'all have seen when we did the draft video, I really complimented him as a player. Not a number one pick, not a number one pick. But Atlanta did that, bumped their heads, did that real quick. Hopefully that works out for them. You have Sarr going to Washington, number two. Not a surprise if Zachary was going to go first. And then it came down to the third pick, right? It came down to the third pick. Now it's been clinging all day, but prior to that, it was a lot of Reed Sheppard from a lot of different people. There was possibly some other trade backs. You had the Memphis thing, whereas a lot of strong sources were saying the Rockets and the ninth pick with Memphis. A lot of cap going around in the air. We get to the draft and we pick Reed Sheppard. And I wasn't super surprised by the Reed pick in my just because I felt like my algorithm, and I've said this to multiple people, my first thing, try to trade back and get assets and draft a player, a player you can use that fits you well. If that doesn't work, Reed Sheppard. If that doesn't work, then you possibly could look at Klingon. But what I found out, and after the fact, is that the Rockets actually had Reed as their first algorithm, then to trade back. But I don't know if that's cap or not. I call cap on that. I'm just gonna say that on there. But getting Reed Sheppard, I think, for the Rockets. I'm going to explain my perspective again so people can understand my view on Reed Sheppard. I think Reed is fabulous. I think all the analytics, great basketball player. I think he's going to be a great NBA player. The reason I think he's a reach at the third pick, just overall, I think he's a great fit for Rock. I'm glad we got him, and I think he's going to really help us win games. A player like him on this team, on our team that we have, he's never going to get the full opportunity that the Jalen Greens got, or Cade Cunninghams or Paulo Bancheros, of that top five, top 3 pick type of player to really use the fullness of their skill set. So for me, for Reed Sheppard, what I'm seeing from what he's going to bring for the Rockets early on is that how fast can he get into his niche? And for me, from all the comments I'm seeing the Rockets say, they like him as a ball handler potentially, as a shooter obviously, and a defender. I think he's going to be a guy that is going to be supportive of the cast they already have to start, and you hope that over the years he can scale up. But to me, this is a great fit because he addresses ball handling in the backcourt off the bench. You're going to have a shooter that's going to be able to shoot on movement that we've been begging for Lord knows how long. I think he's the first of his archetype that we've had on this roster since Garrison Matthews. And you guys know I hate Garrison Matthews. So this is definitely a big
to be clear, before the comments kill you, you're not comparing him.
No. I'm just saying the archetype, a movement shooter. We haven't, for the type of players we have, Jalen, rim pressure, Alp, dope, getting triple team. Not having a movement shooter with Sengun as you're trying to play a kind of a weird Sengun hub is criminal. So off of that alone, like the dude just makes sense for the Rockets. Like he's coming in to fit that role, and I think that the upside for him is some of the other stuff, the pull-up middies, the ball handling, the transition passing, the pick and roll. I don't know if he's going to get to run that early in his career, but overall, I think that for drafting him, the Rockets had him graded as the highest player. Stone said in his post-game comments that the Rockets have him quite a bit ahead of everybody else, the number one player on their board. I would still take Sarr, number one. But I think for the Rockets, this was a great pick, and I'm nothing to be mad at. I think he's going to be a great fit for this Rockets team. I'm just ready for camp to start to see what role he has for them. What was your overall perception on Reed in the third pick?
Yeah, I mean, now I'm excited to watch the summer league team. Previously, I was not. That was not on my radar. Now, if it was going to be Klingon, like I'd watch the summer league, but big man in summer league, whatever. But now, okay. So with me, I'm with you. I was on team trade back. I thought the only 2 players that stood out to me, and I didn't do a deep dive on every prospect on the list, so take that for what it's worth. But the 2 players with potential star upside to me were Sarr and Sheppard. Right? Their likelihood of hitting that upside, I have no idea, but those were the 2. So I had said I was cool with whatever the Rockets were going to do, and I'm cool with Reed Sheppard. Trading back, pick up more assets, that's one option. But if the Rockets really think, look, this pick is playing with house money. So for me, don't go with the safe pick. If you think someone has star upside, take the swing, because if it doesn't work out, oh well, right? They need a movement shooter. They need a shooter, period. There was some stat that we saw where Reed Sheppard is, like the third player, I think, in NCAA history or something like that.
To have
Since
40% from three, one of those random arbitrary
yeah,
numbers.
it was like 16
5,
points, 6
16
assists, something like
points,
that.
ties his shoes and bunny knots, and wears one sock higher than another. And everything. But yes, it was
like 60 something percent TS, but it was Tyrese Halliburton, Steph Curry,
Steph.
Reed Sheppard. What is that stat worth? I have no idea, but it's an interesting one.
It's very interesting.
But it's exciting, right? Yeah, they get a player, they get a prospect with star upside, and that has been the whole MO of the tank of the rebuild, right? Is like try to find as many players with star upside as you can find, see what happens. I do think on the topic of movement shooting, I think it's unfortunate that we haven't seen them try to deploy Jabari Smith as a movement shooter. I think there is potential there, maybe not as a three-point movement shooter, although I think he can, but definitely as a inside the range as a movement shooter, he can do that. But they need a three-point shooter. They need a movement shooter. I mean, they need a shooter. They haven't had shooting, and this guy addresses that at the very least. And then if he can, hit his upside, you get a point guard, you get someone who can run offense, you get someone who can complement Sengun simply by being able to shoot, you get someone who can complement Amen Thompson by handling the ball, also being able to shoot, playing alongside him. At the very, very worst, you get someone who can do what Aaron Holiday did last season, which was make threes. I think he was the best or one of the best three-point shooters on the Rockets roster last season. And we saw at times how sometimes the Rockets just needed somebody to knock down an open three-point shot, even if he was 6 feet tall, which Aaron Holiday was and is, just to win some games, right? Like there were times earlier in the season, halfway through the season, where Jalen Green was getting benched because they just needed someone to catch and shoot the open three and make it. And Holiday could do that. And at the time, Jalen was not doing it. So if Reed Sheppard can do that, great. He can find his role right away. But I'm excited, man. I mean, the upside, we talked about this on Rockets Watch, but kind of reminds me of upside kind of reminds me of Mark Price, if anyone is old enough to remember Mark Price. But I love, just a little white guy shooting, This rebuild has been missing. The core of the rebuild has been missing an American white guy. We have Sengun.
I've literally said that verbatim on a channel. We need a white shooter. Like every good team, bro, you need a white shooter, bro. But yeah, go ahead.
You need a white shooter. My mind was on like, hey, Dalton Connect, white shooter. He's a little bit bigger, athletic, but hey, Reed Sheppard, white shooter. Why not? So I like it. I mean, I think that there's a lot of upside. Rafael Stone mentioned that, they had Reed Sheppard the whole way. What I do, I want to talk about Sengun, the whole, if, there was all this, if they draft Klingon, that tells you they're going to move on from Sengun, blah, blah, blah. Those people clearly, to me, either don't watch the Rockets or don't know Sengun's game, because the roles that, if anything, drafting Klingon to me would have signaled that A, they could trade Steven Adams because he's an expiring contract, or B, they were hesitant about Steven Adams actually being healthy for this upcoming season. It never put Sengun in jeopardy, right? Klingon, to me, fills the niche of, the defensive huge, basically Walker Kessler, backup center, matchup specific, can give you productive minutes, doesn't play like Alperen Sengun at all. And the Rockets put a lot of smoke screens up. I mean, they were pumping information that Klingon was going to be the guy. You saw Kelly Iko start saying Klingon has edged over Reed Sheppard recently. So either someone was telling Iko the wrong thing, or the Rockets were lying in the post-draft presser where they said it was Reed Sheppard all the way, and it wasn't very close. Something ain't adding up. Math ain't mathing in some facet. Even Woj, that's the thing. And when Woj is saying it, that is your cue that's coming from the team, right? Woj isn't saying anything about the team unless it's coming from the team. So that was also interesting. But again, also back to Sengun, I see people saying like, oh, everyone thinks the Rockets are going to trade Sengun, everyone blah, 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 blah. Let's just not forget 2 years ago, they benched him for Bruno Fernando, who may or may not still be in the NBA. I think he's at the end of the Hawks bench. Yeah. Then they tried to sign Brook Lopez, who was going to start. They were not going to sign Jock Landale. They only signed Jack Lando because they whiffed on Brook Lopez and they needed a center. So that means Alperen Sengun would have been your backup center. So don't forget those two things. And then now you hear trade talks coming from all the big names, Windhorst, Woj, whatever. Maybe they're wrong, but Sengun's name is in those talks. So it's not like this thing about Sengun is just conjured out of thin air. There is actual concrete evidence suggesting that Sengun may or may not be a staple. Who knows? At least as far as he's viewed internally. But all that to say, I'm happy with it, man. The Harden trade now turns into Tari Eason, Reed Sheppard, half of Cam Whitmore, technically, and then whatever is left when you do the transactions and look at all the picks, right? All these picks that they have, we'll see what it turns into. So really interesting from that perspective. But yeah, I like the upside. I like the fact that if he hits his upside, the Rockets have another chance at a potential star. It fills a position in need, right? They don't have a backup point guard. He can be the backup point guard. They don't have shooting. He can shoot. They specifically don't have movement shooting. He specifically can, be a movement shooter. Fills a need, gives you potential upside. Why the hell not?
Yeah, I'm with that, and I think his upside is going to be predicated on two things: how quickly you pick up defense, and would they let him rock as a ball handler, get him on ball, those reps. Because you named Steph and Halliburton was one thing those two guys have in common. Those are primary guys. Yeah, those are primaries. Those are the guy you give the ball to. And Steph, when he came into the league early on, he was like they were trying to play him like a James Harden because Mark Jackson had him running hella pick and rolls, and it was Steve Kerr that came and said, "Nah, let's stop that. Let's get you on DHOs." So it's the opportunity for Reed. I'm curious to see if the Rockets are actually going to cater to his skill sets. I honestly feel like they probably should make a decision on some of the players that we have. There's a possibility that, Reed turns out he's better than some of the guards on the team, and then he may need to get those reps. But we'll see. All that's going to be seen over the next season.
What guards do you think he could be better than?
Cam or Jalen. As far as in 2 or 3 years, I am not even better talent-wise, but just the NBA player. Like if the dude is like what a lot of people are saying try to tell me when I said I'm going to trade back, for him, his biggest upside isn't his movement shooting. Like you said, that's baseline. Like I expect him, maybe not year one. Like the guys struggle shooting in the NBA because you got to learn how to guard. The distance is there, and then the closeouts, everything is different. Like even the ball is different. So I'm going to give him grace on his shooting splits year one. Probably by year two, he'll be in his groove shooting. He's going to be a great shooter. His upside is not shooting. His upside is off the dribble shooting and passing, because what makes Steph great is not that he could just shoot, is that he could pull up from 30 or, he could break you down midway through his dribble, just change his mind and shoot it. What makes Holly great is not his shooting per se, it's his passing, vision, etc. So you have to have something else that you do. And so his shooting is his baseline. Is it going to be Reed's ball handling? Is it going to be his ability to break down the defense? Is it his vision, IQ, whatever it is? I want to see if Ime is going to give him the opportunity to do so. So you got to beat out Amen Thompson for on-ball reps. You got to beat out Jalen Green. You got to beat out Cam Whitmore. Fred VanVleet is still here. Sengun is going to be taking some of those on-ball reps. So just, temper your expectations for year one. I think, like you said, this is I see him as a icing on the cake. Like, we've got a good core, and I think what we were going forward with was good. Us getting the third pick was not expected. You get to add a player at a position of need and somebody that has the upside to scale up. Even though he's not a traditional third overall pick that I can build my franchise around, or this is a guy that we want to be like a staple of our franchise, centerpiece, I think that we've gotten essentially a great player that you can just have on your team for the next 10 years. I think, the Rockets did a great thing. And yeah, like you, bro, I'm pretty satisfied where we're at right now. I'm just excited to see where these guys play, man.
Yeah. I mean, no disagreements there. And before people in the comments get on me about, Amen Thompson's the backup point guard, not Reed Sheppard. I think Amen Thompson's going to be a wing, and I think Reed Sheppard gives you the optionality, buzzword that the Rockets love, to play those guys kind of interchangeably, where you have Reed handling, Amen slashing, Amen handling, Reed moving and shooting, just more versatility. Last thing before we get out of here, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you, fresh out the oven. Where does Reed Sheppard rank in the now core 7 rankings? Where does he slot in? Just off the top. I'm not going to hold you to it.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna disclaimer. Nobody can hold me to this because I am running on about 4 hours of sleep, and it's what is it? Midnight. It's about to be
Yep.
midnight. We're recording this. All right. I'm gonna go with my rankings. As number one, I still have Amen Thompson as my top prospect for the Rockets, just because of he has IQ and physicals. I'm gonna put Sengun at 2. Obviously, I'm gonna have right now. I'm not gonna lie. I'll put Jalen at 3. I'm gonna have Jabari at 4. I'm gonna have Tari at 5. I'm gonna have Reed at 6. I'm gonna have Cam Whitmore last. And you guys already know my views. I value IQ. I think when it comes to just physical tools, he's not like physically more talented than anybody that we have on the team right now. I think all of them are just. I mean, that's why they went higher. Like these, or in this draft, like Tari Eason would have been like a top 6 pick, in my opinion. Cam Whitmore would have been a top 5 pick. But the IQ is the great equalizer in life, and I think Reed has tons of that to boot. So I'm not going to put him over like just everybody, but I think that him and Cam can battle for that 6-7 spot. Cam may make me be wrong. He may turn out to be our best player. I know people love Cam Whitmore, but that's just me. Now you got to answer that. You got
Yeah.
to answer that, and you got to deal with putting Jalen at 7. Go ahead. Let's hear
No,
it.
honestly, so it was going to change a lot from the last time we did a ranking. I think I'm step for step with you. The only thing is I might swap Tari and Jabari, and that only depends. That only depends on if we're talking about production versus potential. I think Jabari's potential is higher. I think Tari's production is higher. Jalen previously was at the end of my list. Jalen has skyrocketed because of how he ended last season. If he comes into the season on that note, for sure. Oh, sorry, but I will disagree with you. I'll put Sengun first, Amen second.
Okay, I'm not mad at that.
Yeah,
I'm not mad at that. Amen is on pack watch though. If this year isn't like just clear cut, like I'm that guy, then yeah, Sengun is definitely going to take that spot.
I think Amen's going to show to be the Swiss Army knife that we talk about. I don't think he's going to show up with like a jumper, for example, right? I think he's just going to do more of the same, but he's going to play more. So we're just going to see it more. And the impact is, there's just going to be greater as a result of that. But last thing I'll say, you touched on something very important that we did not previously touch on, IQ. Reed Sheppard's IQ. I am big on IQ. Yeah. Basketball IQ is devoid in a lot of American basketball players these days because for whatever reason, the focus has shifted to individual skills in like a one-on-one context. And when you do that, you're focusing on you, the individual, at the expense of the rest of your team, and you forget how to play, which is why I think a lot of these European players or overseas players, I should say, are now starting to come into the league with success. It's what sets Sengun apart, the vision, the IQ. It's what sets Jokic apart. It's what sets Luka Doncic apart. Like you can go down the list, right? These guys are being coached from a young age to play team basketball, and our American basketball players are being coached by these Instagram trainers to do tween hezzy step backs and all this cool shit that doesn't necessarily make you a better team basketball player, even though it might make you a better one-on-one basketball player. So Reed Sheppard having high IQ, Alperen Sengun having high IQ, Amen Thompson having high basketball IQ sets them apart. The other guys that we have aren't known as like high IQ basketball players. Doesn't mean they're dumb people. It just means that their game is not, elite in terms of how they process in real time as they play. But Reed Sheppard has that. And when you don't have the measurables, having the IQ paired with the skill can set you apart. So I'm excited about that.
And the last thing to that formula is work ethic. When you have skill, IQ, and work ethic, I don't give a damn if you a janitor, you a lawyer, a teacher. That combination is unstoppable. And I think that's, to me, the most comforting thing about him as a player. Like, once again, obviously, I thought they should have traded back, but drafting him, I'm not mad because, like I said, I know he's going to be a good NBA player just off of those 3 intangible things. And from all accounts, from what everybody has said, the dude's he's a worker, he's smart, and he wants to be great. So that's all you could ask for. So with that said, obviously, there's so much to go. We could talk for 3 hours. We're going to have more.
We'll be back.
I think. Yeah, we'll be back. We'll break down Reed. I want to just talk about
Matt Maloney reincarnated.
Please don't scare us. Matt Maloney. Oh, my God. Yeah. If any white comps, in fact, the question of the day, what is your comp? I'm gonna challenge the comments. Give me a non-white comp for Reed Sheppard in the comments, bro. Because all I've heard
A
today, I've heard
non-white
AJ
comp.
Redick. Who was we had? Jimmer Fredette. It's just give me if y'all can create. I have one. I forgot what it was, but I do have one for Reed Sheppard of a non-white player that he is, and I feel like it's kind of accurate. But let me know in the comments and in the chat. We will be back. We'll be back. We'll break down some more, more
How about
details
former
about
Rocket? How about former
no,
Rocket Aaron Brooks?
uh, uh, maybe in this era, if Aaron Brooks played in this era, you know what? Like real quick, I'm gonna tell you a funny. Somebody said, "What would Reed Sheppard be if he was non-athletic without it?" Because they were talking about his vertical and everything, and non-athletic, just a regular non-athletic and black. I was like, he'd be B Brown 6, basically. That's if he Bobby Brown, just a 3-point shooter. So the fact he's
Or
an athlete is a plus.
or he'd be Aaron Holiday.
Aaron Holiday. Aaron Holiday got a little. Didn't he boom on somebody during the season? I think
Did
he
he
did.
boom on something? I thought Aaron
He
Holiday. I didn't
did.
know he
He
could
had
get
one
vertical.
dunk, bro. I ain't gonna lie. I know you got
Okay.
the holiday season. He had some good games. I will give him that. But yeah, let me know who your non Caucasian comps for Reed Sheppard is, the newest Rocket. Appreciate y'all, man, for rocking with us. We got the Rockets are 7 deep now with their core players. No more core 6, it's the core 7. We'll see where it goes, and we'll be with you throughout the summer for it. Keep rocking with us, and we're gonna keep dropping that fire.
Bang bang.